Okay guys, so welcome to today's session of, and today we are talking about functions, and typically we are getting into quadratic functions. So we have this question on the board. So the question says solve and sketch the graph of y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, so let's get into it. So when you have a question asking you to solve, when you have a quadratic question like this, okay, there are some few outlines that you need to draw out so that it can help you in answering the question. So first of all, we are going to find our direction. Right, so with the direction, basically what we are saying is that if a is greater than 0, then your graph is going to go upwards. Right, your graph is going to look like this. And if you have a less than 0, then the graph is going to go downwards like that. Okay, so in this case we have our a is equal to 1, which means we are going to be looking out for something like this. Okay, then the next thing you are going to look out for is the vertex. The vertex, which is h and k. Okay, so the vertex is the maximum or the minimum point at which the graph tends. Okay, so in this case, this level here becomes our vertex. Okay, so we are going to look out for that as well. Then we are going to look out for the y-intercept. Now, what's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is basically where x is equal to 0. So any point at which x is equal to 0 becomes our y-intercept. Okay, then we move on to the vertical symmetry. Okay, so with the vertical symmetry, we are basically looking at where x is equal to h. That is, if you have this particular point here, okay, that becomes your vertical symmetry. So that vertical line upwards becomes your vertical symmetry, because at that point x is equal to h. Okay, then finally we look out for the roots. And what's the root? The root is basically the possible x values where y is equal to 0. Okay, so this is our outline that we are going to follow to solve this particular question. Okay, first of all, we know that given the equation y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3, we cannot solve the question in this form, right? So we are going to change it or convert it into the standard form. And what is the standard form? We know that the standard form is basically the form a into bracket x minus h all squared plus k. So this is our standard form. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 3. So we are going to pull a out. Okay, and we know that from the initial point we know that a is positive, so we can pull out positive 1. So when we pull out positive 1, we can have into bracket x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, all right, we are going to find out the half of this number here, right? We are going to find out the half of this number here, and then we are going to add the square root of it and then subtract the square root of it. So we find the half of negative 4, we square it, and then we add and we subtract. Okay, so we find the half, we square, we add, and then we subtract. So that's the rule that we can follow. So we are going to have our 1, then we can open up our bracket again, s squared minus 4x, and this is what is going to happen. So half of negative 4 is negative 2. So we are going to square negative 2 and we are going to add it, and then we are going to subtract it again, which is still going to be the same formula, just in a different expression. So we are going to have plus negative 2 squared minus negative 2 squared. Okay, and this one, the whole thing gives us 0, right? Okay, plus 3 bracket close. Okay, so we are going to have 1 outside. So you are going to have x minus 2 all squared. The square of negative 2 is going to give us 4 plus 3 bracket close. Okay, so now we are going to have 1 into bracket x minus 2 all squared. Negative 4 plus 3 is going to give us negative 1. Alright, continuing further. Now we can multiply the 1 into the left hand side of the bracket so that the right hand side can become free. So we are going to have something like this: 1 into bracket x minus 2 all squared minus 1, and this is equivalent to the form that we are looking for, which is a into bracket x minus h all squared plus k, where our h, so now looking for our h, right, which is our vertex now. Okay, we can find our vertex now. So for our vertex, we have negative h is equal to negative 2, and this is also h is equal to 2 because the negatives are going to cancel out. Okay, then for our k, we are going to have k is equal to negative 1. So our vertex, which is h and k, becomes 2, neg 1. So this is our vertex. Okay, so now we can look for our y-intercept. So with the y-intercept, we know that for our y-intercept, we know that x must be equal to 0. So we are going to put it in the equation. So y is equal to 0 squared minus 4 into bracket 0 plus 3, and that is going to give us y is equal to 3. Okay, so at the y-intercept, we are going to have the coordinates 0 and 3. Now we move on to the vertical symmetry. And I said the vertical symmetry is basically this particular line that we are looking out for. And at the vertical symmetry, x is equal to h. So therefore, x is equal to 2. So this becomes our vertical symmetry, where x is equal to 2. Then we look out for the roots. The root is basically the possible x values. Possible x values when y is equal to 0. Okay, so we can equate the standard form that we had, which is 1 into brackets x minus 2 all squared minus 1 is equal to 0, because all of this represents y. We can have 1 into bracket x minus 2 all squared is equal to 1. Now we are going to move the square root to the other side. So we are going to have x minus 2 is equal to square root of 1. And we know that every number that is squared is either positive or negative. So it is positive square root of 1. Okay. So we have x is equal to 2 plus or minus square root of 1. And we know that the square root of 1 is 1. So we have x is equal to 2 plus or minus 1. So that means x is equal to 2 plus 1, which is equal to 3. And x is equal to 2 minus 1, which is equal to 1. Okay, so the possible x values is 3 and 1, right? The coordinates at those points, we are going to have 3, 0 and 1, 0. So these are the coordinates of the roots. Okay, so now we are halfway there, so now we can sketch our graph. Okay, so if this is our x and y axis, okay, we know that at our y-intercept where x is equal to 0, we had 2, and our x-intercept we had x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 3, and our vertex, for our vertex we had h is equal to 2, k is equal to -1, which means 2, -1, right? So that is going to be somewhere over here. So we have 2 and then we have -1 on the y-axis, so our vertex is going to be somewhere here. Okay, so now that we know the vertex, we also know that our line of symmetry where x is equal to 2, right? We know that x is equal to 2 over here, so our line of symmetry is going to be at this particular point. Okay, so now we can sketch our graph passing through the y-intercept and through the x-intercept. So we are going to have something like this, which is also going to pass through the vertex and then goes upwards. And this is the parabola form that we are looking out for. Okay, so this is just a simple introduction to quadratic equations. If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for more updates. So till I meet you again, bye bye.